Your beliefs about your income were installed before you can ever even tie your shoes. And the worst part is you've been reinforcing them every single time you speak. You see, if you've ever said, I'm just not confident speaking, I always blank out on sales calls, I never know what to say until after the fact. Maybe you've been in the shower replaying a conversation that happened and wish you had the right word to say in that moment. Or just noticing that when you're on a sales call, you can never be the fullest version of yourself. I want you to know this. You were never born with that fear, you learned it. And the great thing is anything that was once learned can be unlearned. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you how and why your subconscious mind rules over 95% of your behavior, your day-to-day environment, the way you think, how you think, and more importantly, how you can shift that. So we're going to go over how the wrong language is blocking you from making sales happen, and how it's blocking your future and your confidence and overall your income. Okay, so I've helped high ticket closers, life insurance agents, coaches, entrepreneurs, agency owners, real estate investors, you name it, help them understand what thoughts, what beliefs, what identities are driving their ability to sell or to get stuck on a sales call. You couple that with 10 years of experience teaching this stuff, and we start to understand there are a few primary concerns that most people have, and there's a few different shifts we can make to change them. This video is going to help you out a lot today. So part one, your mind was programmed before you were ever even aware. So between the ages that you were born till about 7 years old, there's something called an imprint period. Think about this as your mind being like a sponge, where every bit of water that is coming onto a sponge, it's soaking it up. It can't reject things that are true, things that are false. It accepts everything as true. For example, if someone were to tell you the sky is orange, you would grow up thinking that a blue sky was actually the color orange. And this is an exaggerated belief, but how many things like this have influenced your childhood? Maybe seeing your parents argue about money at the kitchen table, and now you develop a belief that finances are not to be talked about, or talking about money creates stress. There's no filter, there's no logic, it's just accepting the imprinting. So that is why psychology and NLP call it the imprint period. It's the years when your identity, your self-worth, and communication patterns were wired and they were formed. Now what happens is when something is formed at the root level, that drives all behavior, all thoughts, all values, our identity. And in NLP, we teach people how to identify that and reprogram it to create a new empowering belief. So if you like this kind of work, you may have heard of Dr. Bruce Lipton. And he's a cell biologist, and he shows that during those early years, your brain operates in what's called a theta state. It's a hypnotic, programmable frequency where you're pretty much just receptive to whatever information is coming to you. It's almost like when you're very tired late at night and you're just kind of going along with things, you can't fully process information, you're not thinking most clearly. So if you ever heard things growing up like, don't talk back, only speak when spoken to, money is hard to come by, people that have money are greedy. Those didn't just go in one ear and out the other. They went in one ear and got imprinted into your brain and into your thought process. Some people they're thinking BS. They're thinking with their belief system that is no longer serving them. So I'm going to tell you about a client that I had. Just say that his name was Mike. He would literally sweat before his Zoom calls. Like hands were shaking. And this is actually quite a few different people where they would get so extremely nervous before even a phone call, where that person couldn't even see them. The worst they can do is hang up on them. But that nervousness, that fear, that weird energy translated into how they talked on that sales call. And this is why you can read 100 affirmations in the morning. You can say, I'm rich, I'm wealthy. I believe successful things are bound for me. You can say all this stuff, but if the vibrational state that you're in or the feelings, thoughts, and emotions that you have there are ones of lack, scarcity, fear, doubt, that is what's going to be going out into the universe. And it does not respond to a script or what you say. It responds to the emotional frequency that you're saying something in. And that is why sales is a transfer of emotion. Whatever emotion you feel internally is going to be what you're transferring externally. And whatever you transfer, your prospect is likely to pick up on and have amplified. So when we dug deeper, he was made fun of at the age of 8 years old for reading out loud in front of his class. One moment, one decision shaped his future forever. And we did some time work on timeline therapy. We went back and we figured out exactly what was the first moment he can remember that he would have never thought of consciously until we were able to get into the subconscious, identify that one situation, choose to believe something else, let that belief go, and his mind started to literally rewire with a new belief system. Neurons are connecting in a whole different way. And that's why this stuff goes way beyond just sales. Sales is down here. The beliefs, the identities are up here, what's driving. Just sales is one form of how we actually conduct this and show this through our spoken word. So he made a new vow, and it was, I don't speak publicly because I always mess up. And that was the vow that he had. And he realized that literally almost 20 years later, after the time he was 8 years old, that belief was costing him thousands of dollars in missed deals on sales because he didn't speak up when he knew he should have. And maybe you're someone listening to this where you're on a sales call and there's something that you want to say, and it almost feels like a part of you is blocked from saying it. Whether it's fear, hesitation, doubt, it almost feels like that part of you that wants to say the thing just can't come out. Imagine if you were able to shift that thing, how much more direct would you be in your communication? How many more lives would you impact? And how much more money would you make in all areas of your life if you were able to speak clearly and directly without having any other scripts running? It's almost like we help you get to just being a blank slate so we can re-pattern or reprogram the identity that you want to have in there. So until you uncover that root decision or that root belief, your communication is always going to be filtered mostly through fear. Fear is one of the biggest killers. It's one of the biggest sins that most people live in, myself included, for the longest time. Now, your words are not descriptive. They're creative. Here's what I mean. Your words don't describe your situation. They create your situation. If you go into a certain circumstance thinking that it is going to be a certain way, let's say that I'm going to approach a prospect at the gym, for example. Maybe let's say I'm recruiting or I want to sell real estate to them. And I approach this person and I think, man, this person's going to think that I'm bothering them. They're not going to want to buy. These thoughts are going to influence the words that I speak, and that is going to come out. My energy is going to be shaky. I might stutter. I'm not going to fully believe in what it is that I'm saying. And you wonder why that person's not interested in wanting to buy. So whatever experience that you have going into a situation, whatever beliefs you have going into it, is going to dictate the experience that you have during it, and therefore the outcome that you have coming out of that situation. So this is so important, way beyond just selling, but understanding how to take control of your thoughts. Because most people think that language is how we describe the world, but in NLP and in the Bible, language creates the world. One of my favorite verses, Proverbs 18:21, it says that death and life are in the power of the tongue. So every time you say, I'm not good at sales, I'm just awkward, I'm not a closer, I don't want to be too pushy, I don't want to come across as desperate. That's not just a statement, that's a spell. And I think back to so much of my life where I would get missed out on opportunities. I wouldn't say what I wanted to say. I had something blocking it. And every single time that I didn't talk to the girl, I didn't meet the new friend, I didn't create the outcome, or I didn't create the opportunity, my mind justified it and said, well, Cody, that's just because you're shy. So the next time I went into that situation and I didn't do it, of course you didn't do it, Cody, you're just shy. And it became an I am statement. You see, the words I am are some of the most powerful language or powerful words in the English language, because whatever comes after the I am is your identity that you're latching onto. So be very aware if you have some sort of condition, if you have some sort of thing that's holding you back, don't say that you are that thing. Don't even say that you have that thing. You're experiencing that thing right now, and you can choose to experience something else. This varies on what it is, but what I'm talking about is going to be the mindset beliefs that you've had. Maybe your condition or your experience is that I can just never be good at sales, and you've self-diagnosed that condition to yourself, or I'm just not someone who is meant to have money. You can change that belief at any given time by making the conscious choice to choose to believe something different. Notice how much powerful language I used in there, that you are in control of that. So there was a study done at Stanford on self-affirmations, and participants who wrote positive language about their goals increased activity in the brain's ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Whatever the heck that means, what it simply is, it's the area tied to motivation and your value-based behavior. So what that shows, though, is that your words literally prime your brain for success or for failure. And that's why there's a famous quote that says the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't are both right. So if you are in sales like me, or if you have a passion for sales, the sales calls isn't where you lose the sale. To be honest, it's way before you ever even speak. If you're struggling to close deals or lead with confidence, it's not because you don't know what to say. It's because you rehearse failure in your language so many times, it's now your default mechanism. And what happens habitually becomes the thing that we identify as normal. And it's the same way that you need to be very aware of all the things that are going on around you, because if someone in your life, even if you don't talk to them that often, but when you do, it's always doubt, it's always negativity, it's always fear-based, it's scarcity. This might be a friend, might even be a family member. That is going to become normal to talk about. And when you start to elevate, you're going to develop a keen ear for that. And I noticed this, that I used to cuss a lot, and I didn't know there was anything wrong with it. I didn't even notice I was doing it. And a few people would tell me like, hey, Cody, you cuss a lot. And I'd be like, okay, like it helps me explain the language. Like what's the issue with that? And when I started to develop my relationship with God, I don't know what shifted, but I developed a very keen ear for hearing certain things that were not life-giving. They were not positive, and they were just simply filler words, or they were draining. And that's why you notice that when I'm speaking, I rarely ever say the word like, or right after what I'm saying, because I'm aware of these words. And if I can be aware of it, someone who is a very, very shy, unconfident person, you can be aware of it too. It's just by learning in the correct pattern. And my life's work now is teaching this stuff so people can get better at sales, at closing, better public speakers, whether through Zoom, a podcast, or on a stage, and just better in every other area of their life, because communication drives everything. So here's the real life tie-in. An agent that I coached very early on, he had every tool you can possibly imagine to succeed. Scripts, his tone sounded good. He knew about the products, but before every sales call, he would mentally think, I hope they don't hang up on me. So he would rush with every single thing that he would say, because his default thought was, they're going to hang up. I need to build value. I need to build rapport. I need to give a reason for them to stay on the hook. And what this is tied to, it's tied a lot of times to your childhood, where you think that good things have to be fought for. You think that love even, or relationships, it's just how long can I keep this person? How can I show value before they leave? And a lot of times what it is, it's fear of abandonment. It's fear of rejection. It's fear of being alone. And we might just think, no, I just want the sale. But we don't know how much of that internal subconscious script is driving the little things that we do that don't allow us to be grounded. Because what I've learned is that when I've had the biggest shifts in my life, it's not from something new that I've learned necessarily. It's from something old that I unlearned. And again, anything in life that you've once learned, you can unlearn it and believe something else. If you truly believe that, you are in control, you are powerful. And I'm sure you can think of a lot of ways, well, Cody, what about this? I didn't choose to believe this. Okay, if you didn't, who chose to believe that for you? Well, society, I was just taught this way growing up. Cool. You can choose to believe something else. And we can argue this all day, but the person that accepts that as truth becomes empowered to create change in any area of their life. So after we were able to identify that this person had this belief and do the mindset work on it, he went from like, I hope this goes well, I hope I'm able to make a sale happen, to I'm here to serve, I'm going to show up powerfully. And he literally tripled the amount of money that he made the following month after that. And it was beautiful to see. And this was a life insurance agent that I worked with, but this applies to every freaking industry known to man. So the next section here is that identity is a set of decisions that you've made. You're not a shy person. You just made a decision, either consciously, most likely unconsciously, to protect yourself from judgment. Maybe you were speaking up like the client earlier who, when he was 8 years old, he spoke up and he got shut down, and therefore he developed a thought or a trigger. Whenever I'm about to speak, I shut down as self-preservation to avoid getting hurt. Because what your subconscious mind's prime directive is self-preservation. Stop you from getting hurt. It's not necessarily for your growth. It's to keep you safe and to protect you, which is not a bad thing at all. But we need to learn how to control that instead of letting that control us. And what happened with that guy, with myself when I was younger, that shyness, that lack of confidence, it didn't just become a pattern, it became my identity. I carried around with me every single place that I went, and it didn't help me. So in NLP, we call this the identity level of change. And I'm going to show you guys a description of what this looks like right here. When you kind of lay down the different layers, you have your environment, you have your behavior, your capabilities, your beliefs, and your identity. So identity is the hardest to shift. As a practitioner of NLP, we talk a lot about your environment, your behavior, etc. At the master practitioner level, we dive deeper into your beliefs, your values, and your identity, because that is what takes that deep subconscious work. And here's a good example. If you think about like a tree that's an apple tree that keeps bearing bad fruit, you can pluck off all the fruit, but it's going to keep bearing that kind of fruit until you rip the roots out and plant a whole new seed. So when you learn this kind of stuff, you're able to rip out the roots, the limiting beliefs, what has been holding you back for your entire life, put in new seeds and create a new identity. This is why a lot of people remain stuck. They can get a new job, a new relationship, move to a new area, get a new car. They can learn stuff. They can buy the course. They can read the book, whatever the case might be. But there's always some sort of little block they can't identify where they're not achieving success and other people have, because it's not the thing you're doing, it's the thing or the person you're being. Doing is the environmental thing, it's the behavioral thing. Being is that identity thing. So if you want to be able to understand what this stuff is and help rewire these things, I do mini breakthrough sessions. We spend 2 to 4 hours together on Zoom. We dive very deep into your personal history and we change all of this stuff. It's not cheap, and I take on a very select amount of clients for this because it's very intensive, kind of draining work, but it creates change immediately in these breakthrough sessions. So if you keep working on your skills, my sales tactics, overcoming objections, I got to say this, I got to do this. Maybe if I dial here in this room, or maybe if I'm doing outside, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you don't upgrade the belief, the identity, the value that's driving it, what's underneath it, you're always going to be self-sabotaging. Now, here are some tools to rewire that voice in your head. Number one, audit your language. Audit your language. I'll be honest, I already know few people are going to do this. For the longest time, I wasn't someone who would actually intentionally take the time to do this stuff. I would just listen and say, yeah, that sounds good. But even if one person does this, I know a life will be changed. Get a language audit journal. Write down every disempowering thought, statement, question, decision that you say, and reframe it using a power-based structure. Here's an example. Let's say that early on, here's what I would tell myself. I always freeze on camera. I would reframe that as I'm training myself to be calm under pressure. And I would read that right before going into doing that thing. And it started to rewire the way that I viewed it going into it. And as mentioned before, the way I view a situation before going into it will determine the experience that I have coming out of it. And in NLP, I teach something, it's called VACOG. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. Think about it like your 5 senses. Sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. The 5 senses that we experience the world with. So here's an example. I can say, do you see what I'm saying? It's a visual one. I can say, does that ring a bell? It's an auditory one. Does that feel right? Do you get a concrete example of what I'm saying? And these are different ways to create subconscious rapport with people you're talking to, because you understand what primary submodality is driving them, how they process information. But the only way you can do this, and the reason why I bring this up is not to go deeper on it on this episode, but it's to show you guys that you would not be able to pick up on someone else's language or how they're processing the world if you're so focused on how you're doing it. The best way you can become magnetic and just a powerful communicator is by not needing any sort of validation, not trying to prove a point, not trying to build rapport with your prospect, but just being in rapport by simply just being. And this doesn't come from what you learn. This does not come from what you learn. There's not a course or a book you can read that's going to help you with this. It's rewiring all the beliefs and all the things that are no longer serving you, that are keeping you stuck. That every time you talk, you have that fear base of, what is this person going to think of me? Are they going to reject me? I want to be a part of the tribe. And these aren't things you're thinking of consciously. They're subconscious things that show up and that mess up your ability to just do life and be yourself. So ask yourself this question right now. When are you at your best? When are you literally at your best? Are you on a hike? Are you at the beach? Are you in your room vibing to music? Ask yourself these things and start to identify what is driving you. And a lot of times people have never spent the intentional time to ask, what drives me? Who really am I and why am I this way? But the more you know thyself, the more you can understand someone else. If you don't really know yourself, or you're too afraid to look into your own shadows, it's going to be very hard for you to hold space for a prospect on the phone when the conversation starts to get a little bit deep. Next question. What does the version of you that closes with confidence believe about himself? What does a version of you that closes with confidence believe about yourself? What belief is there that's driving that? Stand, breathe, and anchor that into just your being to where you don't need to think about it. Because here's the thing, you were never broken, you were just conditioned. And when you learn how to speak differently, not just to others, but to yourself, you start showing up with the power that was always there, just buried under bad programming. And if this resonated, you can subscribe here for more videos like this. You can reach out for more direct one-to-one coaching, specifically if you were in an industry like sales where your ability to understand your mind relates to making more money. Biggest reason why, if this is work that we're going to do together, I want you to be able to have a shift at the end of this that allows you to have an immediate better quality of life that we can tangibly identify and say, yes, this helped. So if you're ready to help train this stuff, there's so much more content I'm going to be releasing on this, not just about skills or motivation, but this is the very deep stuff that I find most people are not talking about that I know will change your life if you apply. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.